Hey guys, gonna do some commentary for Warlord Zon'ozz in Dragon Soul. This will be Heroic 25. I'll maybe do a separate 10-minute video because there are a little bit of differences on this fight. Starting off, we want to face him toward the raid. That's where we want him to spawn the orb. This is like a ping-pong fight. The orb's gonna be going back and forth. You're gonna have people soak it, which will knock it back the opposite direction. And it'll just keep knocking back and forth. You can see here it has a 5-second cooldown for when it can be knocked. So this is really important to pay attention to as a tank, because if a knock happens too soon in the ranged here, the cooldown's not going to be quite up yet. So when the orb comes into melee, it might just go straight through them and into the boss, which is going to cause us to go into the next phase. So this is really important to keep an eye on. To make sure that he's not going to phase too early. This frontal that just happened to me here, that's something you're going to want to AMS if you're a blood DK every time you can. It's going to do quite a bit of damage, and it's going to heal him for 10 times the amount of damage it deals. So damage reductions are great for reducing not only the damage you take, but the healing he gets. You'll kind of figure out too, like when these actually happen. Like the Fuji timer, the first one comes way after the timer usually, like typically like 7 to 10 seconds after. But the frontals coming out of the phases, the phase transitions are generally going to be a lot quicker. They're going to be like instant. So the orb this will happen quite a bit. The orb trajectory gets changed a bit, and so it's way off to the side here. So as a tank, we want to reposition the boss a bit so that the melee can still hit the boss while they're doing their soak, because remember, this ball is basically going to the ranged. They get hit by it, it bounces back toward the melee, and then the melee are all gonna like soak it together and hit it back toward the range. So we want them to be able to do that while still attacking the boss. We don't want them to have to run like 20 yards over to just soak that without being able to do any damage to the boss. And basically for cooldowns here, he's going to be getting a stacking and rage buff that makes him attack quicker and do more damage. So it's one of those situations where you're going to use some lesser cooldowns early and then work into bigger cooldowns at higher stacks. So the typical just bread and butter way I do this, I usually just look at the bounces, how many bounces we've done. Really the number you care about the most is the enrage count, but this is just like consistent for us based on, you know, when our guys bounce the ball, and I know when it gets to 9 I need to like phase them anyway, so my CDs need to last me until this point, so I just look at this number, but you can also look at the enrage. But time your cooldowns like around either one of these, and I start the fight with Bone Shield pre-popped. Once I go through that, I will just kind of DS to keep myself up. He's going to be low stacks. It's not really a big deal. And then it's going to be Bone Shield at about 3.5. We'll just go back a little bit here. So about 3.5 or 4. Normally I'm pressing Bone Shield. For some reason I didn't here. I waited like a little bit later. Usually I'd do like 3.5 on bounces for the Bone Shield. But that's kind of a late press. But sometimes you just, you know, avoid and like heal a bunch, and you don't necessarily need to press it right away. The Vamp Blood, I wait until I feel like I really need it to press it. And he's getting like higher stacks here, so good to have it like preemptively. We should be AMSing this frontal too. That was a bad miss there, not AMSing that. And then we call for the PS, and a lot of times I'll also wall, because the next time we do this phase, I'm not actually going to need PS or wall, because we're only going to go to 7 instead of 9. We take the most damage we will for the rest of the fight in this first phase 1, just because we're going to 9 stacks. We're keeping him here longer. So all the future ones, we're going to take a lot less damage. So the second one, we're not going to need wall or PS, just sack. So feel free to use both of those on this first one. And then there, as you can see, we got to our 9. We're ready to let the ball come into the boss to phase him into the Tentacle phase. So this is something you got to pay attention to as a tank. Like, look where the trajectory of the orb is and move him into it if it's not just going to come straight into him. If it is going to come straight into him, melee just move to the sides and you're good to go. But you may need to move him around to catch that. So when you do that, it'll start this Tentacle phase. A lot of people are going to be assigned to killing different things around the room. As a tank, you're always going to be on a claw tentacle. While somebody is in melee of these, they will not do a big, like, kind of raid wiping AoE ability. So it's very important that this claw, and there's one on the opposite side here, are both being tanked by somebody. So we're just tanking Zon'ozz on one of them for cleave, and then bringing him over to this one for cleave too. As kill times get quicker, like people start killing these claws quicker, you don't necessarily need to drag them all the way across the room. You may just, take them to the middle so people can just group up easier, because by the time you get them to the other claw, it might just be dead. So at the beginning of the next phase 1, he's going to cast another orb, so we faced it over toward the direction we want it to go, and then we flip him. And after we flip him, we also want to move like 10 yards. Because like we talked about earlier with this CD, if you don't do that move, depending on where it got soaked, it's probably not going to be up yet. Typically, it'll get back to him at like 4 seconds, at least where our guys were soaking it. So just do that little move, take some steps back, and you should be good on the timer. But again, just kind of look at it and you can kind of judge. Like, if you think you have enough time, you don't need to move. If here we get to 7, so we want to drag him into it. The way we do this on 25-man is we do 9-7-7 for the bounces. I think in this particular one, we actually did 9-7-5. There was a little bit of confusion and a incorrect call, but it ended up being fine. So here, if you need help surviving here, you can press like AMS. That'll make you take reduced damage from this room damage that's happening. You can throw like a bone shield there. Vamp Blood is great in that phase. If you have it, it really helps with like group healing and stuff. Most of the time you're going to need it just for surviving the phase 1s, but if you are able to save it, that is a huge boost for those Tentacle phases. So we spawn the orb over there, we flip him, and we move back like 10 yards. And watching the timer there versus the orb, way good on that, so don't need to worry. And then kind of going back to our bread and butter here, 3 to 4 stacks, we're popping a bone shield. And then whenever we feel like we need it, we can pop the Vamp Blood. Or if you can figure out a good timing for it, you can just not press that and save it. So here there was a call made to go in at 5, which wasn't what we actually wanted to do, but there was a little bit of confusion. So we ended up doing 9-7-5 as our thing. So here, during this phase, you're going to want one tank on this one. So that's going to be me. The boss is going to move to me soon. And then we have our Feral Jude over on the other side with a healer. And he's just in melee range of the claw, so it doesn't do that big AoE raid wiping mechanic we talked about earlier. So yeah, the boss is just going to move over here to you, and the whole raid's like stacked up. You can look to use like a Vamp Blood here if you've got the 4-piece tank set. That's a huge benefit for the raid here. And then your wall from the first phase at the beginning of the fight is going to be back up here. There's a lot going on here, so good time to use wall. Don't just throw it to throw it. Like, throw it at a time you actually need it to live, though. Because that can be a big difference maker for sure. But yeah, that's the whole fight. Basically, use AMS every time there's a frontal if you're a Blood DK. Plan out your cooldowns. Like I said, the Bone Shield into Vamp Blood into PS into Wall is great for the first one, the really long one. Later ones, Bone Shield, Vamp Blood into Sack is good. And then on the like final one, you just have everything up again for this part where you're going to be in the Tentacle phase, but killing the boss and not actually killing the Tentacles. So you can just run all your cooldowns for this part. But yeah, that's the whole fight right there. I would go like more tanky trinkets, more tanky setup while you're progging this. This is a very hard-hitting boss. You're going to take a ton of damage. So yeah, just as chunky as you can go for this one for sure while you're progging it. But hope that was helpful for you guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.